I want to welcome you back to Momentum. We've had, I think, all of us, pretty busy weeks. And usually, when I come and I share with you, I share on a lot of different levels about what's been happening in our lives. I'll share with you, this is what we've been watching on television. These are the ads that we've been seeing. This is what's been happening in different events. This week, I want to share with you our lives through this. I discovered that if I thought hard enough about it, I could pretty much tell you about most of the significant things in our lives through the different deals that we get. This is the first good deal. This was, I don't know, when was this? It was like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. World Series win. If you wore Dodgers paraphernalia on you and you went into Chipotle, 2 for 1. So we went, and it was like just one day between 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock, we went down to Chipotle and the line was out the door and down the block. And Christina and I, we got there, we're like, is this worth it? Sure, it was worth it. We waited a half an hour. And you could have, if you were greedy about it, you could have had 5 BOGO deals for every person that was dressed in Dodgers gear. So we could have gotten like 10 burritos for 10 burritos, but we were reasonable. We just got 1 for each of us. Okay, so first good deal. Second deal was this. Asher just got his driver's license maybe 3 weeks ago. Yeah, he's not here. Just first time too. So we put him on our insurance. But to do that, you don't got to go into AAA. I just called them up and I'm like, I'd like to put my son on the insurance. He just got his license. Oh, okay, just give us all his details. And I don't presently have his, report card with me to send in to you, but I know that there's some sort of discount. They're like, oh yeah, just bring it in whenever you get it. So that was just last week. I walked into AAA and I produced the evidence, said, here's his report card. And I did not know it. But they sent me an email and they're like, oh, you just claimed the student discount? It was $200 off. Wow. Just off the, I'm like, you better keep on getting good grades, my son, because that's a really good deal, right? So you got someone in your life, it's important, get that report card in. Okay, last one. As you know, I've been up north 2 times for my mom's Memorial Day, her memorial service planning, right? So once, I think like a week and a half ago, and then just night before last. So we traveled up there. I made all the reservations. We always go to the exact same hotel whenever we go up, and I did not know it, but I have this Marriott Bonvoy card, and it was just on the cusp of some sort of anniversary. So every single time we went up, they redeemed this certificate that was not paper, it was just in the system. They're like, oh, you get a free night. And the second time, you get a free night. So we only paid for 2 nights out of 4 nights. And it was just this amazing, out of nowhere deal. And that's kind of our life. Oh, did I put that on? Yeah, there it is. Free night, right? It's nice to go online and go, oh, that was free. But this is our life. As I said, I could chronicle the life of my family through the different deals that we take advantage of. Because we are always on the hunt for the best deal. You go on a trip, right? Don't you go for the best flight for your money, or the best food for your money, or I don't know what else you do on your trips, but go to college, right? The best education for your buck. Buy groceries. You fill your tank. You get health insurance, hire a plumber, whatever it is, go to the dentist. Doesn't matter what it is. We all navigate and shop. We look for the best deal. The deal that's going to maximize what we want for what we give. This morning, as we return to the book of Ruth, we're going to find ourselves in the midst of a transaction, and this transaction we have been talking about for like 7 weeks throughout the whole book of Ruth as we've been studying this. And this deal, this transaction will speak into our lives about how we are supposed to negotiate, navigate find, seal deals that go against our traditional instincts. It gives to us a whole new perspective on what it means to get a good deal. So if you've got your Bibles this morning, turn to our text of studies, Ruth chapter 4, verses 1 through 12. So, of course, you can open your Bibles or your Bible apps, or, of course, you know in your bulletins we print the text of study every Sunday morning. Now, since this is such a long passage, again, as you know, we take these things in chunks so that we can kind of better study them. And I gotta admit, this is a long, long passage, so it's gonna take some patience. Hold on, because there's a lot of detail in our study today. So, we're gonna start with the first 6 verses here, and the author relates this to us about, the happenings. Well, starts this. It says, "Now Boaz went up to the gate and sat down there, and behold, the close relative of whom Boaz spoke was passing by. So he said, 'Turn aside, friend, sit down here.' And he turned aside and sat down. He took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, 'Sit down here.' So they sat down. Then he said to the closest relative, 'Naomi, who has come back from the land of Moab, has to sell the piece of land which belonged to our brother Elimelech. So I thought to inform you, saying, buy it before those who are sitting here and before the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if not, tell me that I may know. For there is no one but you to redeem it, and I am after you.' And he said, 'I'll redeem it.' Then Boaz said, 'Ha ha.' Okay, maybe he didn't say that. But he said, 'On the day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you must also acquire Ruth the Moabitess, the widow of the deceased, in order to raise up the name of the deceased on his inheritance.' The closest relative said, 'I can't redeem it for myself because I would jeopardize my own inheritance. Redeem it for yourself. You may have my right of redemption, for I cannot redeem it.'" Okay, let's catch ourselves up. Always we do this. We talk about our context so that we have a better understanding of our passage today. We repeat this every single week, so we do this faster and faster every week too. The book of Ruth is written anonymously. We don't know. They don't mention their name. But they are pretty clear about who they are writing. The book is filled, as we say every week, with Jewish custom, history, law, culture. So we know that the audience of the book is Jewish. And we know that the overall theme of this book is redemption. God taking terrible circumstances and tragedies and turning them around so people are blessed and redeemed. God is a rescuer. He is a savior. And we keep coming back to this diagram, there it is, of how this unfolds in this book. The story of redemption unfolds like this. Chapter 1 reveals the great tragedy of the protagonists. While fleeing a famine in Israel, this woman Naomi loses her husband. This is Elimelech. He dies, and her 2 sons also pass away in this foreign land called Moab over the course of, let's say, about 10 years. Okay, about a decade. But in our book, it's only about 5 verses. So it seems like it comes like right one after the other. This puts Naomi in a very difficult position in Jewish society. As a widow, Elimelech's property and his estate passes from male heir to male heir to male heir, of which she now has none. So she finds herself destitute. Chapter 2. Naomi now returns to Israel because the famine is now over. But Naomi doesn't return to Israel alone. Ruth, her Moabitess daughter-in-law, pledges herself to Naomi in this vow of what the Bible kind of describes as hesed love. It's this kind of special, all-encompassing kind of love. Ruth says, even though Naomi, you are alone and you are poor and you are at the bottom of the curve of your life, I'm not going to abandon you. Till death do we part. Do we have that? Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried, she says, right? And it's here in chapter 2 that things start popping up, right? Turn around. Ruth meets this landowner, Boaz, while she is gleaning for food, and Ruth finds favor with Boaz, and she informs Naomi, her mother-in-law, I've been picking up this leftover grain in the field of this man named Boaz, right? To which Naomi now says, hey, stay close to this man, this new character Boaz, because Boaz is a relative of the family, a special kind of relative called the kinsman redeemer, who might be able to turn their fortunes around. Okay, that leads us to chapter 3, which I've called the decent proposal. Things just kind of get going here. Naomi devises this plan whereby Ruth now kind of stalks Boaz, and she corners him, and she asks him to marry her. And not just marry her, but redeem this whole thing. Redeem her means marrying into the line of Elimelech, restoring the fortunes of Naomi, and, amazingly, Boaz says, okay, I'll do it. But that okay is with a warning. There is this other relative who is closer to Naomi in the family tree. He is the first to be offered this opportunity to fulfill the role of kinsman redeemer. So Boaz says this, let me go check on this other dude first. And then if that works out, then it works out. Otherwise, I'll do it, right? That's how chapter 3 closes. Boaz is vowing to marry Ruth, but only after this other relative basically turns her down. That's where we are in our reading. And this very first paragraph that we just read, chapter 4, we're going to title this, Deal or No Deal. Deal or no deal.
Yeah.
Okay? Because you can just imagine they're on a stage and there's an offer going on here. And that's the heart of these first 6 verses. Boaz is doing what he said he's going to do back in chapter 3. I'm going to approach this other relative with this literal proposal. But this whole interaction is steeped in culture, ancient law, tradition. So we're going to take a look at this. First of all, what happens here? The author wants us to know this is no informal handshake business. No, this is really serious stuff. Boaz actually makes this very, very formal and public. Goes to the gate of the city where transactions are done, and he flags down this relative. And he says, turn aside, friend, sit down here. But Boaz doesn't just get the relative to sit down. He also gets 10 of the elders of Bethlehem, flags them down, and he says, sit here. This is more than just your, hey, let's work some. This is a formal contract negotiation. Boaz has witnesses. And Boaz presents the deal. And he frames it very, very carefully and deliberately. Boaz says, I got a deal for you. The deal is this. Naomi's got to sell a piece of land. This is the estate of Elimelech. And Boaz is presenting this as an opportunity. And I've looked kind of far and wide for, how's this explained and what's going on here? And it seems like this is how it's shaken out. Boaz says to this relative, this piece of land, it does belong to Naomi, but kind of not. Like, it's kind of in limbo. As a widow, Naomi cannot work the land. She's just by herself with Ruth, and there's no heir, so all she can do is sell it. This is why Boaz begins this proposal by saying, hey, Naomi's got a piece of land to sell. She's come back from the land of Moab. She's got to sell this piece of land which belonged to our brother Elimelech, he says. Now, there are not a lot of references to who has the right to buy this land, but it seems that it follows the bloodline. If you will redeem it, but if not, tell me that I may know, for there's no one but you to redeem it, and then I am after you. There's a line forming for this. So note this, Boaz frames this as good deal, profitable opportunity. This relative is first in line to get this fire sale. Naomi needs funds. This relative can acquire the whole estate of Elimelech. What's the response of the relative? I do it. I want it. I'll redeem it. Wants to buy. But then there is, what do you call it, the end user license agreement. It's a little fine print. Boaz says, hey, there's a little bit of fine print here. On the day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you must also acquire Ruth the Moabitess, the widow of the deceased, in order to raise up the name of the deceased on his inheritance. Oh, well, now we're getting into the weeds here. By the way, when you buy this field, you will also be marrying Ruth. And then you will be required to have children with Ruth. And when you have children with Ruth, all of that land that you have now acquired and paid for, it will now go to whatever male child is produced from your marriage with Ruth. And that is that whole Levirate law of marriage that we've been talking about for like the last 7 weeks, right? Originally, it just applied to brothers of the deceased. But it became actually a widely practiced legal role all over the Middle East, not just in Jewish culture, but just even neighboring nations had Levirate laws of marriage. But here, it wasn't exactly what the Old Testament was prescribing, but it had grown in the culture, and it kind of morphed into what we see here in the book of Ruth, right? That if a male in a family died without an heir, not just the brother, but also more and more heirs in the males in the family would then be required to redeem that situation, marrying the widow and providing an heir. So the family line would continue. Now, in the Old Testament, it went like this in Deuteronomy 25:5-6. It says, when brothers live together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the deceased shall not be married outside the family to a strange man. Her husband's brother shall go into her and take her to himself as wife, perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. It shall be that the firstborn whom she bears shall assume the name of his dead brother, so that his name will not be blotted out from Israel. Marriage custom. This marriage custom was the responsibility of the surviving brother for the financial security of the widow, right? Now, the widow has heirs to be able to support her, to show love to the family of the man by continuing his name, and to provide continuity in the legacy of all of Israel. This was such a task of service and honor and love that if the brother refused to raise up an heir for the deceased, get this, this is what happens if you refuse to do this. If he persists and says, I do not desire to take her, then his brother's wife shall come to him in the sight of the elders and pull his sandal off his foot and spit in his face, and she shall declare, thus it is done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. In Israel, his name shall be called the house of him whose sandal is removed. Shame. You are sandalless Joe, right? So this is the big contrast. The relative is presented with this prime deal. But once Boaz brings up that this is more than just a land deal, man. This is an act of redemptive love for the family. The relative, once they know that, they head for the hills. No, thank you. I can't redeem it for myself because I would jeopardize my own inheritance. Redeem it for yourself. You may have my right. You may have my right of redemption, for I cannot redeem it. The relative reveals his fear. I'm going to spend all of this money. Property, right? Buying a piece of property. All of this money. But then, I have to marry this woman, Ruth. And if I marry Ruth and she has a male child, all of that estate that I just bought is going to go to that child. And this man may have also had another wife, may have had other children, not out of the question in this culture at that time, right? But the point is this, to this man, all this is a bad deal. It's a bad deal. It would be buying land and then just losing all that money that you bought the land with to a relative's family. So when the relative sees a good deal, he's all in. Once it became the fulfillment of redemption to help Naomi and Ruth and the house of Elimelech, no more. I'm out. That's basically leads us to our next paragraph. We'll title Done Deal. That's our next paragraph. And this is going to proceed to tell us about the fulfilled commitment of Boaz. The author continues in verses 7-10 and says this. Now, this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning the redemption and the exchange of land to confirm any matter. A man removed his sandal and gave it to another, and this was the manner of attestation in Israel. So the closest relative said to Boaz, buy it for yourself. And he removed his sandal. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, you're witnesses today that I bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech, and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. Moreover, I have required Ruth the Moabitess, the widow of Mahlon, to be my wife in order to raise up the name of the deceased on his inheritance, so that the name of the deceased will not be cut off from his brothers or from the court of his birthplace. You are witnesses today. This is just the fulfillment. This is just how Boaz fulfills his vow to Ruth. He says, hey, if relative number one fails to come through, I'm there for you. I am going to marry you. And it seems as if Boaz is not ashamed of this. He's like, here I am. I'm right in the middle of the city, and I'm declaring this. First, though, the author gives us a little bit of a cultural explanation. They say, hey, this is how you used to seal a contract in Israel. Took off your sandal, and you gave it to the other person with whom you are doing the deal. Ironic, yes? Super, super ironic, because from the Old Testament, the offended widow comes and rips the sandal off of your foot and spits in your face. So here, the man still takes the sandal off and gives it to Boaz. The closest relative says to Boaz, buy it for yourself, and he removes his sandal. But then Boaz very publicly makes this announcement, right? He says, your witnesses today that are bought from the hand of Naomi, all that belonged to Elimelech, yada, 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 legalese. The name of the deceased will not be cut off from his brothers or from the court of his birthplace. You are witnesses today. Again, this follows this huge theme in the book of Ruth, that there's this special kind of chesed love, and it's expressed so often through vows. I will do this. I will keep a promise to you. I will be faithful. It shows up in this pronouncement. He says, you are witnesses today. And then he ends with, you are witnesses today. It's very, very formal. He wants to be held to this act, even though it's going to drain his resources, even though the profit will not accrue to his family line and bloodline. And from a certain perspective, this is a terrible, unprofitable deal. I think that King David later on writes about this man in particular when he writes in, I think, Psalm 15. He says, blessed is this person who can dwell on God's holy hill. He says, the man who swears to his own hurt and yet does not change. Who's more like that than Boaz, right? He said, I'm going to follow through with this. I am of sound mind. This is for Naomi, and it is for Ruth, and it's not for me. That leads to our last section. 2 verses. Good deal. Good deal. Good deal is this blessing that this town now prophesies over Boaz. This whole thing is a business negotiation, but it seems to have been done right in the middle of town, and so the town takes on this kind of Greek chorus role. And they sing, I don't know, sing, but they say this, right, in response to Boaz. The book records in these last 2 verses their words. And they say this, all the people who were in the court and the elders said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, both of whom built the house of Israel, and may you achieve wealth in Ephrathah and become famous in Bethlehem. Moreover, may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, through the offspring which the Lord will give you by this young woman. That's the conclusion. Not only the testimony of the crowd there, which now seals this transaction. They say, right, we are witnesses. So, okay, we testify. But because of this loving commitment of Boaz, this town now pronounces a blessing. This, they say, may you and Ruth be like this. Strangely enough, I don't even think that Ruth is there. It doesn't seem like she's there, but like, oh, we're going to bless your marriage even though the bride isn't here. But this is the core of the blessing. First, that Ruth would be prolific as a mother, right? Have lots of children. May she be like Rachel and Leah put together, who, if you remember, produced 8 out of the 12 sons of Israel. So this is probably, if you think about it, probably a standard blessing for a newly married couple. May you be like our ancestors, right? May you be like Rachel and Leah, mothers of the nation. Then the second blessing is this, simply for wealth. Again, probably a standard blessing. You can imagine, may you prosper, may you be very wealthy. The last blessing, Not standard at all. Very specific to Boaz and this situation. May your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. Is that a blessing? If you knew the story, this looks more like a curse than a blessing if you are an Old Testament Bible head. Because Old Testament account of Tamar and Judah, no, right? Rather unsavory. Super messy, super crazy. It involved unfaithfulness, sin, neglect. Tamar was actually the daughter-in-law of Judah. And she had to dress up and pretend to be a prostitute and lure him in order to sire the offspring who then became Perez. But the upshot of the story is this. In the end, Perez is the product of a Levirate marriage or Levirate dealing fulfilled, right? She had to lure him in order to finally fulfill that Levirate responsibility. And Perez then likely became the ancestor of just about everybody in Bethlehem. Bethlehem is populated with Perizzites. Yeah, so let's just ignore that. The town is acknowledging, yeah, there was some bad circumstances between Judah and Tamar in our heritage. But those circumstances produced all of us, Bethlehem. Oh, so they're wishing to Boaz the same redemptive cycle. May you have life and abundance emerging from darkness and tragedy. And that's the deal. The good deal that comes from this whole transaction. Showing us again the Hesed kind of love that this whole book has revolved around. That redemption emerges from this special kindness, committedness, sacrifice, and care for other people. Ruth displays it, Naomi displays it, and now this is just Boaz carrying through with his love. But today we see this love in a very special lens, on two new levels. First, this account shows Boaz's love in contrast to the unfaithful relatives. Right? Up until this point, there's been no contrast. Here, it's all about, hey, look at Boaz, and then look at this other person who refuses to do it, right? The guy does not even get named because of his lack of love, and it's just so shameful. He's going to go down in history with only the title of the guy who was missing a sandal. But that guy, well, why are we told about this? He's there because we are so often that person. We see life as a series of, well, is it a good deal for me? Is it not a good deal? I'm not going to do it. Is it a bad deal for me? No. Is it profit or is it loss? That's why the author of Ruth includes this contract negotiation. It's a warning to us because we are so often not Boaz. We need to see our own selfishness and flee and be prompted to selflessness. And that is why this is included here. That's the first level of why this is recorded. The second level of why the author shows us this transaction is the accessibility of being able to do the loving thing. Hesed in reach. We could do it ourselves, right? This is the climax of the book of Ruth. This is the big deal. This is the center of the plot of the whole book that we have been leading up to right here. It is the life-changing, the history-altering, heroic challenge in today's passage. And there are no giants being killed. And there's no castle walls being stormed. And there are no seas being parted. And there's no enemies being overrun. The center of the book of Ruth is a guy just like, yeah, I'm going to do the right thing. Today, I'm going to do the right thing. Choosing the deal that does not make sense in the profit and the loss column. But it makes all the sense in the world when it comes to caring for the people around me. And that's something that we all encounter every single day. Whether it's as small as, hey, that person hasn't reached the crosswalk yet, but I'm going to let that pedestrian cross and not zoom through with my car. Or I'm going to give the promotion to that other person who may not be as deserving as I, but may need it more than I do. Ruth is small scale. I can do it. You can do it. Stretching love, but it's within our reach. And so that basically leads us to our one big application today. Pretty obvious application, that is, do the redemptive deal. Do the deal that's redemptive. Be the Boaz, and don't be the scandalous, sandalous Joe Schmo that we don't remember anymore. Choose love rather than apathy. Choose to give rather than receive. Choose to lose over and over and over again and sacrifice in order to make life better for the people around you and show them who Jesus is. Do the redemptive deal. Not the profitable deal. Not the selfish deal. Not the self-serving deal. The deal that serves others, betters their stations, invests in them, which requires, in our minds, it's going to require a couple of shifts in how we think. The first adjustment is this: let redemption be your reward. Let improving the life of people with kindness and love in itself be super rewarding to you. Like, that's the equation that I choose because that's the better thing in life. Or in Jesus' parlance, don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves don't break in or steal. Our bottom line, we have to consider what we spend our time and our treasure on, and think of it as investing in eternal things that shape our souls, shape the souls of people around us, do the work of God's kingdom, share who Jesus is, and show off his nature and his sacrifice to those around us. That is the important equation. It takes a shift. How you calculate. How do you calculate profit and loss in your life? And risk and reward. It's not about dollars, it's not about cents, it's not about interest rates at all. It's about how do you faithfully put your resources where Jesus would want you to put your resources. Now I'm going to share something, and it's not like, hey, look at me, I did this, kind of this. It's more of like, oh, I need to be reminded to do this more often because I don't do it nearly as often. I was at Sam's Club, and we were deep in, this like, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, deep into Girl Scout cookie season. I don't know when that season is, but it's just like hits you in the face when it comes. So oh, Girl Scouts, they're there, right? And I've told you all, there's my cookies picture, right? I have a lot of experience with this. As a child, I did a lot of sales, door-to-door sales. I've told you I was a Fuller Brush child. I went door-to-door with Fuller Brush chemicals saying, hey, let me spill something on your carpet and sweep it up. And then I sold, you know the back of the comic books where they had the seed sales? I would sell seeds from door to door. I was a desperate, poor child. So I'm passing these scouts. And I think, right, Girl Scouts, they're like 9 years old, 10 years old, right? And I'm thinking, this is what I think whenever I pass people selling things. I'm like, I don't want that. I don't need cookies. I don't want cookies. And in fact, I have cookies at home, Thin Mint cookies in my freezer, stored up, because that's what you do, right? Mm-hmm. Thin Mint comes around once a year. You store those babies up, and they're good in the freezer. So I still got cookies in the freezer. But I also think, wow, I've been there. You know, you try to do something good, try to make a little bit of money for your club, and nothing's working out. And these girls, they were just dejected. They were in this pose, you know, this kind of like, I haven't made a sale in 2 hours kind of thing. So I'm actually convinced I'm not going to buy this. And I got to my car and I unloaded my groceries. And that's my goal. Like, if I've unloaded my groceries, that means I'm done. I've hurtled through the ring of fire. I'm not going to buy. But I was just so convicted that I said, okay. So I go back to Cookie Central, and they see me walking towards them, and they perk up, like we're going to make a sale. And I don't know if I was intending to be mean, but I'm like, I'm going to say it like this. And it was, when it came out, it kind of came out mean, I think. I said, I don't want your cookies. I don't need your cookies. I already have cookies at home. And then I said, but I want to buy your cookies to encourage you. And then they're like, oh, this guy is a jerk. You didn't have to say those first two things. So I got a couple boxes of cookies, and then I'm like, well, is this the responsible thing to do? I could probably do more, but I don't want more cookies. I don't want 2 more boxes of cookies. So this is Sam's Club. This is not Costco. So Costco, I could have just pulled anybody. There's like a billion people. There's only one guy in the whole parking lot. It was the cart guy. And I point at the cart guy. I'm like, we're getting you cookies today. So I bring him over and I say, hey, get a couple more boxes. I got to give some cookies away. So I bought him a couple of, so he was happy too. And in my mind, and I think I make these things up. I'm like always the savior in my mind. I think, oh, they're really happy after that. I think they were, come on, they gotta be a little bit happier after that. So I think they seemed a little bit more chipper. Was that a good deal? Absolutely. It was absolutely a good deal. Did it prompt me to think, I should do more of that? Yes! He was this crazy losing prospect, and it's like, oh, this is super profligate. I mean, I'm just losing out here. But I did that, I'm like, I should absolutely do more of this. This is a great deal. This is awesome. But that's letting redemption be your reward. It's losing to win, and winning through losing, redeeming. So that's a first head adjustment that we got to do. Yeah, let redemption be part of your reward. It really felt really good. Second is this: prepare to sacrifice. Prepare to sacrifice, because this is at the heart of the redemptive deal. It's losing. It's giving, and giving painfully, and giving of yourself. Boaz, this is a big sacrifice, right? He's saying, not my legacy. I'm potentially going to lose. I'm going to be erased. The memory of me is going to be erased, basically on behalf of somebody else. In the end, of course, though, because of Boaz being so giving and wonderful here, we do remember him. He's in every single genealogy of King David. But Boaz was prepared to be erased. And we know that we are to be sacrificial. And we know that we are to be prepared to give our lives. Jesus, after all, came and he lived, he was betrayed, he was tortured, and he sacrificed for us. His life was taken, he was executed on our behalf. This is the basis of all of who we are. We have a new life because Jesus paid the cost of our rebellion and our sin against God. That's who we are. But very few of us will be asked to actually die or be hung on a cross. And that's why Boaz is great for us. He's a great example because we are more likely to be making daily decisions to sacrifice our time or our employment or our enjoyment or our future success or our resources. And it's those sacrifices that hit home for us. And we need to contemplate those more often. And I've shared this example numerous times. You've heard this before. You can say, oh, you've shared that example before. But it really encapsulates the little decisions in life that are not so little because they're daily sacrifices that we need to be making. A long time ago, I was in college. Our college group planned a big outreach. I think it was some sort of activity and meal. They're like, oh, come, bring your friends. We'll tell them about Jesus. That program, unfortunately, happened to be cross-programmed on the same day that my roommate planned a big night to go out and see that, Phantom of the Opera. So you know what a big deal it is to plan a night out to a musical, right? Nowadays it's $100-something. Back then it was $60 to go to Phantom of the Opera. That was a lot of money back then. This is 35 years ago. And he had 10 or 12 people going. He was the key person. And it happened to land on the same night as our evangelistic outreach. He bought tickets, got people to RSVP. My advisor, he learned that this was happening. This whole snafu of cross-scheduling. He pulls me aside and he's beaming. And I thought, oh, this is weird because nobody likes it when things are cross-scheduled. And he said, this is when we know, when people know Jesus. And he informed me that my roommate had come to him and made the decision to, instead of going to that, he said, I'm going to help out and be a driver for the outreach. I'm going to sacrifice and not go to the musical. which meant that he willingly chose to give up his ticket and not go, find somebody else to coordinate everything that he had coordinated. Instead, he would bring more people to hear the news about Jesus. And that was a big deal. That's a big good news of that time. That this was evidence that members of our group were actively responding to the gift that Jesus had given to them, choosing to give up what they wanted. And most of us, when we write something down on a calendar, we say, oh, that's too bad. It's in the calendar. I'm going to do this, and you were too late, right? That's what we do, right? That's not my fault. The calendar. He changed the calendar in order to do this. We hear about taking up our cross and dying for Jesus, deciding to live for Christ. But honestly, we are not called to climb up on a crucifix every single day of our lives. But we are asked to put ourselves and our schedules and our wants and our plans aside. We're asked to become more disciplined, more trained to share about Jesus and to give like Jesus and make choices that do not help us at all, but help others. We're presented with seemingly very bad deals where we lose time, or we lose effort, or we lose money. But those are actually the opportunities to care for others, to be like Jesus in the flesh to them. Those are the best deals we can possibly come upon to redeem and to restore and to live like Christ to those around.